Hello and welcome to episode 84 of This Week in Germany. We'll be bringing the world to Germany and Germany to the world with news for the week beginning the 10th of August 2015. My name's Daniel.
And my name's Rob. Each week we feature stories from the news, society, and culture in the English language. If you want to find out more, including ways to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, head over to our website, thisweekingermany.de.
And it's time for another episode of This Week in Germany, and it is the week in which the Berlin Beer Festival happened, isn't that? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, well, it's the International Beer Festival in Berlin, and it happens annually, usually the first weekend of August.
Right, and it's like Berlin's version of Oktoberfest, is it?
Kind of. Well, they both are celebrating beer, but that's kind of where it ends there, where Munich has all these huge tents, and they are pretty much celebrating German beer. The International Festival, as in the name, has beer from all over the place, with over 80 different countries or so participating, and over 2,000 different beers they have. And they, instead of having these huge tents, they have more kind of like stalls that you can go to. Plus, they had 20 different stages set up there, so like musical and speaking events and different sorts of tastings and everything like that. It was pretty grand, and there were supposed to be over or close to, not quite, but about 1 million people that attended this last weekend.
That is amazing. Wow. And so while that beer festival is over, there are always plenty of beer festivals throughout the country all year. I mean, so don't worry, there's always one around the corner. And in fact, Oktoberfest will be coming up in just a couple of months' time. So watch out for that. But it's time for episode 84. What do we have coming up on this week's episode?
Well, the big story that we're talking about is we're kind of looking at the Jihadis release video that came out in Germany.
Yes, and we're also going to go back to that story we talked about last week about the Landesverrat, basically where these journalists were accused of treason and were being investigated for treason, something which a lot of people said was going against press freedom in Germany. There's been a twist in the tale, and a major person involved in that case has been fired. Basically, it's a good week for press freedom. We'll talk about that in our story number 2.
And a big talking point, both on air and online, was a reporter that has come out openly to slam hate speech that's going on throughout the internet.
Yes, that's right. And we've got a very nice destination Germany for you this week. It's the Berchtesgaden National Park. Is that right, Rob? Is it right? Did I read that right?
That is correct. It is the Berchtesgaden National Park.
Close enough.
Close enough, yes. And it is in the south of Germany, and I cannot wait to tell you about it. It is amazing.
Very, very fascinating as well. And, oh, yes, and we have a very interesting German of the week who won an international, won a singing contest in another country. Let's put it that way. So that's all coming up on this episode of This Week in Germany. But let's start with story number 1.
On Wednesday this last week, a disturbing video was released online where 2 people speaking German claimed to be ISIS militants, and they threatened Germany. In this video, they urged those Muslims living in Germany and Austria to rise up and join ISIS and to attack non-believers in their home countries. The head of Germany's domestic intelligence agency, Hans-Georg Maassen, has said that this may be because the number of those traveling from Germany to Syria and Iraq is slowing. He also said that ISIS does still remain attractive to youth in Germany that might be interested in joining a jihadist movement, but German authorities are doing much to deter these actions. Angela Merkel was also called out personally, and it was said that she will be held accountable for her role in coalition efforts to rid Syria and Iraq of ISIS groups.
So, Rob, what do you think about this? I mean, is this something people need to be worried about in Germany?
People need to take note of it, but I don't think it's really something to be afraid of. It's more of a fear tactic, from my point of view, than an imminent threat.
So you don't think that this is something we should take it seriously, but we shouldn't be worried?
Exactly. I don't think that people need to be scared because of this video, but we do need to make sure that authorities are aware of it and take necessary actions to make sure that people are safe.
But this seems to be like something that we get a lot of these videos here. Now, this is particularly unique because it talks about Germany specifically. But these videos from Islamic State or ISIS or whatever you'd like to call them, we get a lot of these, and it's one of the frames through which we see the Arab world these days. It's either these things from ISIS or other Islamist terrorists, or it's, in other ways, war. And I'm quite concerned about how we see the Arabic world in the West. We often see these things that I just mentioned, and of course, these are the main news stories, so we shouldn't ignore them. But it gives people in Germany a very generalized view of the Arabic world. Can we do anything to change this?
We could look at, or the media could portray the Arabic world in a different light, but I guess what a lot of people see is when they show world news, and because there is a lot of conflict going on right now coming out of the Middle East, then that's what people are seeing. They're seeing these wars and conflicts.
I think a lot of people are quite naive about what happens in the Arab world. Like that, I mean, people think, for example, that Syria and United Arab Emirates are probably similar, the same kind of countries, or they think that, in Lebanon it never snows, it must all be desert. When, people think that, no one drinks alcohol in Arabic countries, where in some places it's legal and they go clubbing like they do here, or the people don't understand and don't have any kind of nuanced picture of these places. So I think it's quite, dangerous, because that in a way distances us. So when we see these pictures of war, it feels so much further away. And so I think even though these are the news stories, and these are the important stories, we also need to get kind of a nuanced picture. And this kind of thing fuels Islamophobia as well, I would say.
Why do you think that the people that made this video, why do you think that they're angry at people in Germany?
Well, I mean, of course, it's not necessarily just that they're angry at Germany, and it's rather that they feel that they can use the ISIS members who've come from Germany to propagandize to that country by speaking in their language, by speaking in German. And that helps them to reach more people, to try and bring them over. And specifically, like you said in your report, that they said that Angela Merkel supports coalition strikes on IS targets, and that's why they're against her. But also, of course, they have a general ideological distaste for Germany and non-believers, seeing that they're living in sin. And so I think perhaps there's no real deep reason why Germany is being propagandized to like this specifically.
I see in the news a lot that people are getting arrested either coming or going to join ISIS from Germany. Mm-hmm. Why do you think so many Germans, or some Germans at all, would leave Germany to go join ISIS?
Well, around 600 have so far joined ISIS from Germany. And I guess it's because they feel a kind of a kinship, or they feel a little bit weak and disrespected when they're in Germany, and they feel that they will be empowered by this cause which seeks to include them. And anything which reaches out to you and says that you're special, come with us and make a world as you see it, that feels very empowering. And I think that's what they feel when they go over to do that. But also there's a thin line between extreme Islamic conservatism and terrorism. So there's the kind of the legitimate belief where you can be as far right-wing as you want, as long as you're not hurting other people. And this is a freedom of speech issue. You should be able to say, if you want to say in countries where there is Sharia law that if someone turns their back on Islam, then they should be killed. Well, if that's the law of the country, many people say that's what should happen. That's a very extreme conservative view. And they are brought to the door, these people who are radicalized under the veil of a tough but legitimate religious belief. They're brought to that door, and ISIS helps them walk through that door and become Islamist terrorists. So there is the propaganda and the message behind it is what is attracting people over.
Do you think all the news stories that you see in the media is what is feeding Islamophobia and maybe xenophobia in general in Germany? Yeah,
well, the media depiction does not help. And in Germany, there isn't a widespread hateful depiction, but it's a very naive depiction, a very unnuanced depiction of the Arab world, of Muslims. And so people have a very naive idea about what Arab people are like and what Muslims are like. They believe that there are some liberal Muslims out there, but a lot of them are very extreme in their beliefs, even if they're not terrorists. I mean, Germans don't believe that most Muslims are terrorists, but they might have a very this is very black and white view of the situation. They also don't understand the differences between the Arab countries and what specific issues affect certain areas, and this is something which TV media in particular doesn't cover very well, or hasn't yet, and perhaps has the opportunity to and hasn't taken advantage of it, because it's always trying to give you the most up-to-date news rather than the background and explanation. And on the other side, of course, we don't see people in the media who live like us in the Arab world. We just see the war and the famine. And those are important, with war and the famine that's brought about by people being driven out of these places, people who have to move because they've got no jobs left. You know, people who are millions of people who are fleeing over borders to try and get to a place where they have food and water and safety and shelter. But you know, on the other side, we have refugees. And people don't understand those people either. I mean, I saw a comment left on our Facebook page this week describing refugees as freeloaders, basically saying they come here trying to take from the German state just because they can't, because they're too lazy or something like that. It's a very, very, it wasn't a very well thought out opinion. Not understanding that these people pay thousands of dollars to be able to get on those fishing boats where they know that they could die to come here, often leaving their friends and family behind because they have no other choice. They don't come to Germany because they're freeloading, they come to Germany because they're desperate. And so I think all of these things tie together, and the way that we can fight against this propaganda isn't to make our own propaganda, but to show nuance in how Muslims live and about the Arab world in general.
And now for this week's News in Brief.
Die Hasstiraden im Internet haben ja längst gruppendynamische Prozesse ausgelöst. Die Zahl der rechtsextremen Gewalttaten ist gestiegen. So kann es nicht weitergehen. Nun ist die eine Möglichkeit.
One television reporter gave a controversial message on air this past week on the topic of online racism and xenophobia. Journalist Anja Reschke on the television news show Tagesthema from the station ADR has now sparked a massive online debate discussing her message. She spoke out that there's an ever-increasing amount of hateful speech in online comments and forums, and that these messages should not be taken lightly. As before, many comments on the internet when pertaining to racist or xenophobic ideas were masked in anonymity, and many of today's messages, however, are made by people using their real names. Apparently, that is not embarrassing anymore, Anya stated. She's calling out for all decent people in Germany to hold these hateful posters accountable and not to dismiss their online comments. This is coming after dissent in the country grows, as more and more refugees and those seeking asylum are looking to make a home in Germany. Racial attacks and violence has risen, and Anja Reschke wants to remind people that it's up to them to help stop it. Some of the families of the 150 victims in the German Wings tragedy have reported that they are not content with a settlement paid for by Lufthansa. That amount was 25,000 euros, which Lufthansa said goes above and beyond what they are legally responsible for offering. In the case of the German Wings airplane flight 4U9525 that crashed into the French mountain range in March earlier this year, it may be far from over. A lawyer who is now representing the families of the victims said that he will be pursuing the case of Lufthansa in U.S. courts. The main goal or reason for using U.S. courts are that many are unsatisfied with the reason the co-pilot, who had psychological problems in the past, was able to command an aircraft in the first place. They hope that this new court system will gather more evidence as to what really happened. While no exact figures have been set for what the families hope to be awarded, it is possible that the settlement could be up to 10 times more than what they received in the German court system. Many in Germany are not very happy with France's plan for where they want to dump some of their nuclear toxic waste material, which is right near the border of Germany. One of the downsides to nuclear power is that the waste material emits radiation for thousands of years afterwards. It is not difficult to find a geological location to store the waste, but it is hard to find a location due to all the protests of those local that don't want these proposed storage facilities. France is planning to move the toxic waste to the town of Bure in eastern France. This town is only about 100 kilometers away from Germany's border, much to the dismay of those living there. On top of the location, people are upset about how it was chosen, which was almost in secret. A last-minute add-on to an existing bill which was made to promote business development. Because of this, no debate was held or even a vote in Parliament. Protests are now being started in Saarland, and the whole state government of this German region is rejecting the location. The mentalities about nuclear power differ greatly between Germany and France. While Germany has been working on plans to phase out their nuclear power reliance, France still believes it to be a valuable source of producing energy. All the protests in Germany won't have much effect, though, if any. As this decision is being made entirely within France, it will be the French government's place to decide where the waste is stored. And one of my personal favorite annual events just took place in Cologne this past weekend. Gamescom. Europe's biggest and one of the world's biggest video game exhibitions. Almost 500,000 video game fans came to Cologne to see the hype of the new video games that are going to be released in the future. If you are in the city and want to know how to get to the conference, just follow the crowd of people dressed up in exciting costumes. The largest video game companies show off their plans for what types of games they are working on, and many times, to the delight of the visitors, have trials. There are musical events, speeches, costume contests, video game merchandise vendors, and so many games to play. One of the hottest trends this year is to show up the line-off for the virtual reality goggles, with companies like Oculus leading the way. But now, many others are coming out with technology of their own to add to the virtual reality world. If you like video games at all, no matter if you like to play on consoles or computers, if you like action games or puzzle games, Gamescom has something for all video game enthusiasts.
Time for a quick update on our top story from last week. Last week, it was announced that an investigation into two journalists on treason charges would be stopped. Markus Beckerdahl and André Meister wrote articles for the news website Netzpolitik.org. Earlier this year, they reported classified information on Germany's mass surveillance program. They got this information from an anonymous source within one of Germany's intelligence agencies. But here's the twist. Heiko Maas, the Justice Minister, forced Federal Prosecutor General Harald Range into early retirement as a direct result for the treason scandal. Range had said he would suspend the investigation, but did not make it clear if it would be resumed at some point. Some people see this as a victory for press freedom, the fact that Range is now gone, and proof that the government is serious about protecting journalists' rights. But others are not so happy. The head of the Green Party's parliamentary group said Range was being used as a sacrificial pawn. In a statement, Range said, "To influence investigations because their possible results could be politically controversial is an intolerable encroachment on the independence of the judiciary." As the dust settles, the new prosecutor general has dropped the treason investigation entirely as expected, but the threat to the press could remain. Except now, we have to have concerns about the independence of the judiciary too.
And coming up right now is Destination Germany, one of the best features of the show, because moi is the one who presents it. Moi.
You could just say ish. It's German, so...
Moi just sounds so nice.
French. So what is Destination Germany?
It's where we show you somewhere that is really cool in Germany, somewhere that you might like to visit. It could be something like huge that you're like, oh, I know about that place, and now I know a little bit more. Or it could be some tiny little corner that's tucked away, and you're like, oh, that is so cool, I totally need to go there.
Yes, yeah. And all of the pictures are available online of each week's destination at thisweekingermany.de.
That's true.
It's the best website for all your This Week in Germany needs. And last week's episode was great, especially if they're the type of person who likes looking for a great place to go shopping, or at least window shop, while having the chance to take in beautiful buildings and monuments with great food options. We went to the Zeil, one of Frankfurt's signature streets. They've built it up into a pedestrian shopping park with many gigantic department stores, as well as unique boutiques as well. When you're visiting Frankfurt, you must check out the Zeil if you have enough cash to shell out on shopping. But now on with the feature Destination Germany. Where is our destination this week, Rob?
This week we're going back down to southern Germany in the state of Bavaria. We're going to be staying out of the museums and amusement attractions this week. In fact, we're going to be staying away from people in general with this week's destination.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm sick of people.
I'm going to tell you about a location that you can take in Germany's natural scenery. We're going off to the Berchtesgaden. Berchtesgaden? Berchtesgaden National Park.
Yes.
Yes, we're going to a national park, the Berchtesgaden.
The B something national park. So you're going to cover an entire national park in one episode. I mean, they can be pretty large. Can you fit everything in?
Yes and no. The park is not so huge compared to other national parks in Germany, but that's not saying there's not much going on there. The park is just over 200 square kilometers, so it is pretty small for a national park, but there's tons of cool stuff to see and do there, so I'm going to jump right into it.
Wait. First you have to tell us where the park is. I mean, if the park's small, it's in Bavaria, but it could be anywhere in Bavaria.
All right, you are. The park is way down south and east, and I'm talking right in the very southeastern tip of Germany, right on the border of Austria, right there. Is the major city that it's close to is Salzburg, which is in Austria, and it's about 40 kilometers south of this city.
So it goes into Austria as well?
No, it's a German national park, so all the actual parkland is located within the German borders.
Okay, so there's lots of places with trees everywhere. So why should they go to this one in particular?
Well, first and foremost, the scenic views from both high up on top of the mountains and from the valleys below are simply amazing. As we're in southern Germany, there are some pretty huge mountains, and the Berchtesgaden park is actually the only national park where it touches the famous Alps mountain range that everyone knows about.
That's pretty interesting, and your pronunciation wasn't so bad. So the land is pretty much untouched by any sort of development. So, I mean, I guess it's untouched by any sort of development, being a national park and all.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was created for, to preserve the specific landscape that makes this UNESCO Biosphere Reserve that they created 25 years ago so beautiful. There are no settlements here, just beautiful, untouched nature.
Nature, so beautiful. Other than the mountains and valleys, what else draws visitors to this wild national park reserve?
In the middle of the park, there's a gigantic lake that is almost 8 kilometers long, but only 2 kilometers wide. The reason that this lake is in the valley between the mountains, and I'm talking about some like huge, steep, rocky walls, is that the lake was here, and during the Jurassic Rift, there was a glacier there, and when the glacier melted and formed this huge, long, narrow lake. And now visitors can go to this lake and see a wonderful reflection of the surrounding mountains and forest down this long stretch of narrow lake. And if you go there in the morning, you might even get some cloudy mist floating over the lake and gives it that really tranquil feeling.
Very nice. And the way you describe it makes it sound like this lake must have a regal name, perhaps. Am I right?
It does.
Am I guessing right?
Koenigsee, meaning King's Lake.
Koenigsee.
Koenigsee, yes. It's a very clear and clean lake that has a emerald green tint. And also about this lake is another reason it's a big visitors draw, is that there's a famous church there, the Church of
Saint Bartholomew, is that right?
That is
it's
correct.
It's famous,
Bartholomew.
so I knew that one.
And it's right there on the lake's edge, and so you can go and visit it. And from nearby, you can take a boat tour, and if you're lucky, the guide may play a flugelhorn to show off the valley's echo. It's kind of like a trumpet.
Okay. Very nice. So if I want to go and see this park the way you've described, I mean, just from the lake alone, it just sounds really, really cool. But you said that there are other things to see here as well, and I believe there's a certain historic notoriousness about this place too.
There is, and besides the mountains, the valley, the lake, if you're lucky, you can see a lot of wild animals that are living in this environment. There's red deer, goat-like creatures called chamois or chamois, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Or if you're in New Zealand, which we're in Germany, it's a chamois, but yeah, chamois. And and there are also true mountain goats called a alpine ibex, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly. And these are like when you picture a mountain goat with some huge horns on some cliffs. This is what you're going to see. So watch out for those. And also being a national park, there's a wide variety of different trails and that you can either go hiking or biking on. I'll take you all throughout the forest. And there's a Franciscan monastery on top of one of the mountains. And if you're brave, you can go swimming in the chilly waters year-round pretty much. I forgot to mention there are a couple other huge reasons to come to this park. One is it was where Hitler's vacation spot was. The Kehlsteinhaus. Kehlsteinhaus, which is better known that you might know it as the Eagle's Nest, and where that is.
By the way, it's pronounced Eagle's Nest.
Tours are offered year-round, and there's also a restaurant. It's been turned into a restaurant, and it's a beer garden.
Wow, they turned Hitler's holiday home, well, it's basically quite a big home, into a beer garden? Well, I mean...
And you can be wowed even more, though, if when you go, there's waterfalls all around this area that are trickling through the mountains and into the lake. And if you want that real experience in the park, they've recently opened up an inn that's like an inn/kind of restaurant, cafe, that you can stay overnight. But if you want a spot, you're going to have to book way, way in advance, like almost like a year or so in advance, because there's only a certain amount of rooms, and lots of people want to stay there.
So any tips on traveling to Berchtesgaden?
Well, you can always drive, and it said that there's plenty of parking there, so that's not going to be a problem. Or you can take a train or bus to Salzburg, which is the major closest city there, and then from there you can take a smaller bus or tram, or not tram, but a smaller bus or train to some of the cities that you can just get into the park from.
Very, very nice. And I'm sure after everyone hears this, they're going to really want to check out the photos of the Berchtesgaden National Park to see what it really looks like. So if you'd like to see, go and check out some of the great images on thisweekingermany.de and just click on the post for this episode. And while you're there, you might want to check out some of our previous destinations as well. Next up, our German of the Week section, where we put the spotlight on a prominent person from this week's news who could be a German citizen or even a foreigner who we deem an honorary German, but it has to be someone who's had an effect for better or worse on German culture, society, or politics.
Our German of the Week this episode is Trong Hue. He's 22 years old, and he was born in Hanover. His parents are from Vietnam and came to Germany in the early 90s. Hugh decided that he was going to make the trip and visit his parents' homeland earlier this year. When he arrived, he had no idea that he was about to become a superstar. Some friends said that he should audition for the Vietnam Idol television show, where contestants compete to see who is the best singer in the land. Hugh did very well in the early stages, and he passed all his auditions, moving on to the later stages of the contest. People seemed to love him. The country's viewer gave him the name Hot Boy from Germany, and they pledged their support for him each time he performed. This past week was the finale of the show, where the top singers challenged each other for the title of Best Singer in Vietnam. Hugh won, with an overwhelming victory, gaining 71% of the vote. He said that, though he doesn't speak Vietnamese perfectly, he thinks that coming from Germany and his Western style helped him take the championship title. Even though he is a superstar now in Vietnam and people are asking him for photos and autographs when they see him on the street, he doesn't plan on staying. He says his home is in Germany, though he will be coming back to Vietnam to visit.
And that German of the Week section means, as always, that we've come to the end of our episode. That's episode number 84. We put in a ton of work every single week, so if you'd like to help us out, go to our website, thisweekingermany.de. There's a donation button on the sidebar, and you can help us out with our server and domain costs, and it helps. So thank you very much for that. But there's also other links on there as well.
Yes, you can find a lot of our social media, and that is another great way to help us out as well. Tell your friends, family, your neighbors, people that you don't know on the street. Just tell them about us. And so if you can't donate right now, some cold, hard cash, then you can tell your friends, and that helps us out tremendously as well. So if you go into our website, you can find Twitter, Facebook, all those social media type of things.
Yes, and soon we'll be introducing a secret handshake that you can identify other members of the This Week in Germany club. So
the first rule of This Week in Germany is to tell other people about This Week in Germany.
Yes, and if you don't, then you need to spread the word. Spread the word of This Week in Germany. So, yes, so that's it for this week. This Week in Germany is produced by me, Daniel Winter. It is written and presented by myself and Rob Bishop. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back, as always, in 7 days with more of This Week in Germany.